Hey, afternoon, everybody. This is exciting as we are live streaming again from the Motor1.com test car happy hour. And you guys, we already have comments and questions. That's what happens when you open up the live stream a little bit early. Brilliant move on Mr. Simone's part this week. So,
Boom.
Yeah. So as a reminder, in this particular live broadcast, we'll be talking about the cars that we drove this week and other interesting topics. You guys, wherever you're watching us, can submit comments and questions, right? So no matter what social platform you're following us on or watching this on, YouTube, Facebook, and or Twitter, please shoot us some notes, shoot us some questions. We'd love to answer them live on air. See if you can stump us, I suppose. So with me today, as ever, is our illustrious director of video, Mr. Clint Simone.
Hi, everybody.
And senior editor, Jeff Perez, live from his countertop. We've just heard.
Hello, I'm standing here.
Jeff's in a different part of his apartment every week, and we're going to continue just to change it up on people.
It's
like to
an
mix it up.
exciting journey for all of us. Thanks for everybody who's logging on. I see some activity. I don't see any comments yet, but again, like keep those options flowing. Marsh Maxwell, it looks very much like you're trying to ask us something. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm on the pins
We're
and needles
eager to find out.
Yeah. So we've got kind of a Toyota heavy show today, guys, right? Like some exciting, well, one very new, as you can see in the photo there, one very new Toyota, one that's a little bit old, but I'm stoked to be driving, and then an electric vehicle. They're all the rage.
Yeah, that electric vehicle is all the rage. That now that it doesn't catch fire anymore, I think it's a big deal for everybody.
Exactly.
Oh my God. Starting out hot, almost literally. We've got Jay Dowley, who's telling us that they like Mopar, and yet again, I think Kevin Hawthorne. This might be 3 for 3 or 3 out of 4 so far of these that we've done. Saying good evening from Lakeland, Florida. Lovely Lakeland, Florida. We're
Lakeland, Florida.
We're represented out that way. But all right, I'm rambling. Clint, tell us what you're driving this week, or what you've gotten done driving this past week.
Let's talk about the Sequoia, a vehicle that I didn't think was very contentious. And then I kind of got in it, I drove it, and I realized, so let me backtrack because I'm already going in circles. Last year, I drove a Lexus GX, and I wrote a review that I felt was very honest. And I said that, parts of that car were like very old school and in a lot of ways kind of stupid. And I thought it was balanced, whatever. And there were a lot of comments. Still to this day, I get an email almost once or twice a week telling me how awful I am as a human being, because God forbid you ever say something that is less than stellar about a Toyota Lexus product, because as everybody knows, they're kind of indestructible, which is great. That's a part of their DNA. And I am afraid that I'm going to have a repeat episode with the Sequoia. So there are two parts to the Sequoia thing. I think that it is a great replacement for the dinosaur that was in its place beforehand. The last car, not to piss Seth off, but it came out when I was in middle school. And now I got to drive this replacement for it. But it is all new in a lot of different ways, to their credit. Just like before, it shares a lot in common with the Tundra truck. That's kind of the thing. This is a big, bulky body-on-frame SUV, and they want it to be truck-like. And also, just like the Tundra, this has a hybrid powertrain. Unlike Tundra, it is standard in Sequoia. So even the cheapest car you can possibly build is going to come standard with a hybrid V6 engine. And that's a huge revelation for this. It also gets a lot of updates inside, mainly Toyota's big new infotainment suite. So those alone are big updates to the Sequoia that make it a better product than before. And in my first drive review, I say it is a better product than before. But they made the interior smaller. The interior is less functional. So for a family vehicle, because of that hybrid packaging where they had to stick the battery underneath the car in the back, there's less second row room than before, there's less third row legroom than before, and less cargo space. So if you're doing this just as a family, eyeballing it against the Tahoe, it's not that cut and dry. And it's going to be up to you to determine if the new powertrain and technology can offset the lack of interior space.
It's really interesting. So like I recently a couple weeks ago got out of Ford's updated Expedition, right, which competes in this category too. And you look at that, and listen, the Expedition is really cool, great powertrain, like it's good for a lot of people, competitively priced. By the way, we have Alicia looks like wants to know what the price of the Sequoia is too, which is always something I'm hammering on price
it's
first.
Good. It'll put me on the spot if I remember all of it correctly. It starts at just over $58,000 plus $14.95 destination, so call it 60 grand or so, and it goes all the way up into the mid high 70s. There's a TRD Pro option and a capstone now, so a fully loaded Sequoia with everything on it is going to be pushing 80 grand now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's honestly, I think right in the sweet spot for the category. And the fact that it's a little bit smaller, but you could make the argument probably more rugged, right? Like a little bit more of a, if you want to do off-roading and things like that. That's always been in kind of the DNA of Toyota here with their truck-based body on frame stuff. It's really hard to compete with Tahoe is the answer. That's sort of what I was leading at. It's really difficult to compete with Tahoe in this space because the pricing is very aggressive. You can sort of spec at obviously, like there's a trim walk for all of these things. So you can start, get in cheap and get everything you want for a lot of money. But I think that in terms of space, power and performance and pricing, Chevy's been doing this for a really long time. Tahoe and Suburban are class leaders for a reason in terms of sales volume. And Sequoia brings a totally different crowd. Like I imagine that you're not going to get a ton of cross shopping, but when we're looking at it as first drive based on like specs and price and stuff like that, that's a big bar to clear for a full size SUV.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff and I both love Tundra, and that truck is a real revelation for Toyota. They put their heart and soul into that thing. Sequoia has a lot of what Tundra has as well, and it does compete extremely well against the Tahoe until you get to the matter of interior space, and partially that it drives a little bit worse. But honestly, the tech suite is huge. I prefer that to the Tahoe. It really gets into a back and forth. And I think it'd be a great comparison test too that we should probably work on.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of sad to hear that you didn't like it because, like you said, we do love the Tundra so much, and it's basically just a Tundra SUV, right? The tech is really good, the engine's really good. I think they killed the styling. I think the styling looks so good on the Sequoia, especially if you get the TRD Pro fully loaded. But
and that's what I think is important too. I didn't not like it. I just didn't like it as much as the Tundra, unfortunately. And I think that's a big distinction to make. It didn't have the character that I wanted it to across the board. But that alone, like what's on the screen right now, is the biggest reason to hop into this thing and even consider it. That is a huge step forward. Their interiors are finally like usable, not frustrating. It's a big revelation that they're doing their infotainment from the US in Texas now. And that is where they're designing everything for the world.
It's crazy because the Highlander and I guess a lot of the previous gen Toyota infotainment systems are some of the worst things I've ever used in a car, which is crazy because when you get into this and you get into Tundra, it's like an iPad. It's like a tablet. It's so seamless and so easy to use, like you're using your iPhone. I think I wrote this in my Tundra review, but it's one of the few infotainment systems that I don't immediately like click over to Apple CarPlay when I get in the car because so many of them are just so clunky. This one is really good. So I like that about it. But yeah, if it's down on passenger space against Tahoe and a little pricier, that kind of sucks.
Yeah, it's important to consider all these things, and maybe the family man can shed even more light on that because I'm not loading kids into both rows on a daily basis, but I could imagine it would be a worse time doing so.
Well, the funny thing is, I would have to look at specifically, first of all, get in it. I mean, it's always hard to tell. If there's one thing that I've learned over, now 3 years of having a child or multiple children is the specs don't always tell you the tale, right? Like you need to get in the car, you need to see how you fit, like no matter if you have kids or not, like just see how you fit in a vehicle. But if you do, like how do your car seats fit? How does your stroller fit in the cargo area? Like, because all of these things are strange. They're all non-standard essentially. So how you have a vehicle loaded out ends up being really personal. I would say though, in this class, there's probably nothing, even whatever the vehicle that has the smallest cabin is still going to be really good for kids, right?
Yeah.
Like especially small kids, easy ingress and egress, whether they're getting in or it's you. This is the harder part. You sort of not having to duck and stoop to put a kid into a seat. Is really good. How big the door aperture is important. And Toyota being Toyota, I would be surprised if they got that stuff wrong, even if they had to have had to make some compromises to the overall interior space to get the packaging they want.
Yeah.
My question though, Clint, is in terms. So what we are talking about, I think probably a class exclusive hybrid, right? Like it's the only. Is there anything else that has a hybrid in this class?
No.
So
it's class exclusive, and it's the only option, and it's great. It'll get you. I mean, the EPA hasn't certified the ratings yet, but consider it 2021 MPG combined, which is a few steps better. The only thing that would do better is a diesel version of the Tahoe. I mean, the Wagoneer you can get close to single digits if you try hard enough. So there's not like
everything
sweeping.
Else. Yeah, everything else is like 15, 16, 17 combined or something like that on it.
So was the old Sequoia with the big iForce V8. That thing was a monster. So this is a much better. It's a great powertrain too. It's really good. I am curious to see over time, and it's also important to say they're not going to have trouble selling these. I mean, they were saying that they anticipate selling 3 times as many of these as they did the previous generation. And it's basically because they made everybody wait. Like Jeff and I can build anticipation for 10 years plus, and then say we're going to sell a lot of them too. So it's not going to be difficult for them to sell these, even with, some compromises on the interior.
Well, so they're going to sell 3 times more than the previous gen. So they'll sell at least 30 of them. Which is good.
They said, I mean, take their word for it, not mine, but they said they have over 100,000 hand raisers already, meaning that they put out a blast to all the current owners and said, who wants one? And that number of people indicated that they were interested in purchasing one.
I mean, there's huge pent-up demand, period, for SUVs right now in any space because it's hard to buy one, especially bigger family-sized SUVs. They're incredibly difficult. Like they're turning the same day that they get on lots. If they do get on lots, people are pre-ordering them. I was just in Las Vegas doing this. It's boring, but this whole conference that's basically about like kind of the evolution of dealer sales, and everybody was saying like this is going to be the U.S. is most likely going to move into more of a European-style build-to-order. Sort of space. So the idea of there being demand is, I mean, there's demand everywhere, and I'm sure this thing is going to be sold out or sell as many as they have the capacity to produce for a number of years after it goes into production, right? So
yeah, definitely.
Totally bankrolling Toyota for a while, which is great to see, and the fact that it's a good product is also huge there. Cool. So there are a couple questions here. One, or actually, I don't know if we had any questions. We just had a couple of comments. I wanted to say hi to Eduardo from Chile. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching from that far away. Thanks for hopefully subscribing on YouTube. If you haven't, you should do it now to the channel. And Kevin Hawthorne, yet again, saying thanks for all the videos. Mr. Simone is the man to thank for them right here. He's responsible for all of them, if not even starring in half of them or so.
We do a lot of them. At least we try. Sequoia was a really fun one to be around too. It'll be, it was a great candidate to film because there's so much new to talk about. But, we want to make sure we get the right information to everybody too, especially with the family car. But then we also drive sports cars, as we're about to talk about.
That's right. Yeah. So the second half of our Toyota roster today is the car that I just got yesterday. The GR Supra with the 3-liter and the 8-speed automatic. I almost said 10-speed. I feel like every automatic that I've had recently has been 10 speeds, but this is merely 8. A paltry 8 ratios. That's 3-year-old Jack in the back of the.
Did the baby come with the car? Or was that a mistake?
We've been stuck home all week, as you guys know. So I'm a tiny bit of inside baseball. I've been recovering from COVID, a whole family COVID. So we've been stuck in the house, and so we've been spending a lot of time out in the yard and just hanging out. And working out there and eating meals out there. And Jack that's my 3-year-old Jack. He got very excited about the race car. He calls everything that's vaguely sporty a race car.
He's not really wrong. I mean, they make a literal race car version of it.
Yeah. No, he segments the automotive landscape into cars, Mama's car, which is just an SUV because my wife has a Q5, a race car, and a Jeep. And Broncos are Jeeps, in case you were wondering. But super fun car. I took it I took it for one quick drive, less than an hour last night when everybody was kind of safely put to bed. Like I went out and went down one of the better roads around here. I was expecting this car to be really competent and fun and quick. It's got almost 400 horsepower going to the 382 horsepower going to the rear wheels. I did not expect it to be like as wild as it is. I mean, this, like, Jeff, we were talking about this a little bit in chat, right? Like this car is really loose. It is really easy in sport mode to get the rear end just unsettled and really slide it around a corner. That it's been a long time since I've been in something with this much power that behaved like that. That was a quote unquote like a new car, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because I mean it is very much BMW structure, right, and components.
Mm-hmm.
But when you drive like this compared to an M4, it's two totally different cars, right? The M4 is very tight, very quick, very sharp, and this is like Seth said, more fun. You can slide it around, you can fling it around. It gets a little loose. Like I really love the Supra.
So how do you get a car that's 99.9% German and then tune out some of the German that's in it? I mean, there are literal BMW badges on this vehicle, and yet it does drive pretty different from a 2 Series, a 4 Series. And in my mind, a little bit worse, just to play the contrarian role here. I didn't like how unruly the Supra was, and I think it falls apart once you really start to push it.
So one of the things, that's an interesting question, and I am curious to hear what like your gripes with it or your primary, sort of complaints, Clint. But one of the things that I was wondering is maybe I missed it because we're talking about an hour in the car or less than an hour in the car overall, but it seems to only have 2 modes, like a default normal mode and a sport mode, right? And I actually really like this because the sport mode is really pretty hardcore and the normal mode is really quiet, not aggressive at all, easy to drive, like around town without any issue at all. I don't tend to be somebody who uses all 6 modes when 6 different drive modes are available. I do like to be able to configure things, I guess, like that's kind of cool, but like I really want it one of 2 ways. I'm either just going to be commuting or I'm going to be driving really like aggressively in a car like this. So one thing, the question there is, every BMW that I've ever been in, especially one with an M of any kind associated with it, has got a minimum of 4 driving modes usually. So is part of this that Toyota just took a hard stance and said, hey, our sport mode is going to kick ass and our normal mode is going to be for driving around the burbs? Some of this is just programming and suspension setup.
This is a good question, and I think it's relevant too.
Did I find it small inside? I am so foodie for one. I am huge. I am 6'5" and about 240, right? So yeah, I mean, this is always a tough question for me to ask. I'm so used to fitting in cars very differently than like Clint would, for instance, and I'm not an average size person at all, so it doesn't feel especially small to me. It doesn't feel like cars that feel especially small to me. A Miata with the top up, of course, is one that like a car that I couldn't drive. Let's see, like a 911 has always been a car that's a small car that feels really roomy inside as a counterpoint to that. I would say this one's a little bit closer to sort of the 911 feel, right? You do feel packed in. You've got a lot of controls around you, but not in a way that I felt like I was eating my knees or anything.
Yeah.
So.
And I like having driven the new 2 Series, that feels far and away larger than the Supra, which is kind of funny. I mean, the just overall cabin space. But to me, one of the bigger problems with it is you can't drive it with the windows down unless your head wants to explode, which is a very particular issue. But the wind that happens when you put down the windows is crazy.
Insane. Don't put down the windows.
That is a perfect door open opportunity to go on the I live in California and everything is perfect road, but I'm not going to.
He got it there. What about you, Jeff? You've been in this car kind of recently, right? Or didn't you have one a couple of months ago?
It's been a little bit, and I can say that I never felt like tight or uncomfortable in it, and I'm 6 foot, so I'm somewhere in the middle there. It actually doesn't feel as tight as like a C8 Corvette, because the Corvette has that stupid giant center thing that makes you feel like you're shoved in a little corner. But yeah, I never felt too tight in this car.
Yeah, I think overall a lot of different people will as a sports car will have no issue with it. I think that in the range of sizes that we have represented here, we probably have, I would guess, 98% of humans, maybe 97. So if Clint can at least co-sign that he's not uncomfortable driving it, then we're probably okay.
Can I just be a little bit, I don't know, I want to pose a question to both of you, especially after a 1 full hour of driving experience. When we look back and say, hey, Toyota brought back the Supra, they made all this fanfare, they teased it for 17 years before finally bringing it out. It leaked 3 times. Like, it was such a buildup before this car actually hit the market. Do you think that it was worth all of it at this point now?
I do. I don't see why not. It's a great car. I mean, the name thing is a big one, because you can say the same exact thing about NSX. NSX was teased and previewed, and concepts were way beyond what the Supra was. So you could say the same thing there. But I think it was. I mean, I don't have the sales figures in front of me, but I can only assume that they're doing okay. It's not like I wouldn't say it's like a home run, because I know there's a lot of criticism about the BMW stuff, but it's kind of easy to just forget all that when you drive it.
Yeah, I think we tend to, we as members of the automotive media tend to maybe overinflate. It's our job to remember that stuff too, by the way. Like, it's our job to know 5 years from now, like, how this rollout went, and to be able to kind of reference it or even tuck it away on background. I don't think it's the job of like the buying public to know all that stuff. They might, because they'll be, I would guess that there are a lot of super enthusiasts who buy this car. I think that this is not this isn't a Corvette kind of product. This isn't you just roll up and decide I've always wanted it, or I'm sorry, that like you want a sports car today and you don't know what to get, so you grab a Supra. I think this is somebody who has really always kind of wanted a Supra. And so the fact that it exists is probably more important than how it came to be, would be my guess. Although it'd be interesting to talk to owners about it too. They probably have very strong opinions and very nerdy points of view on it too. So.
It gets a manual next year.
Woohoo! That alone,
I can't make it any worse, I think.
Well, yeah.
Before we pivot to Jeff, do we want to try and answer Eduardo's truck question? Can we each do 10 seconds on what truck you'd buy with 30 grand?
Well,
I have a feeling we might all answer the same thing.
He said he's in Chile, so I don't know what's available.
Do they sell the Maverick in Chile?
I was about to say the same thing.
Yeah. Maverick or Ranger, right? I mean, for sure they sell the Ranger. They sell the Ranger everywhere. I would go Maverick, but I don't know what the pricing is, Eduardo. So we would have to look. In the US, $30,000. What truck would you buy?
I wouldn't think twice about it. I would immediately go buy a Maverick. That truck blew me away. And I will throw in an additional point and say, for me, I would stick with the hybrid front wheel drive version. You can only do hybrid and front wheel drive. And you can do MPG in the 40s in a pickup truck. Like, it rethought what a truck can do, and they were just so creative with how they handled it. It was a wonderful, wonderful truck.
And for $30K, you can get a pretty loaded Maverick here in the US. I don't remember the starting price, but I know it's pretty well optioned at $30K.
What would you get, Jeff?
Maverick, for sure. Yeah. Or the Santa Cruz is interesting, but I think I drove the Santa Cruz, and I drove like a fully loaded version, and it was way more expensive than Maverick would be with those same options. And you get the hybrid in the Maverick. And I just kind of like the way the Maverick is. It looks like a truck. It doesn't look like an SUV trying to be a truck. You know what I mean? So I think I'd go Maverick.
I think I like the Santa Cruz better than the Maverick. So I would probably, although the options would be important there, but like baseline, could I get into a stripper taco for, sorry, that was badly phrased. Could I get into a base Tacoma for under 30K?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know what the prices on those are now, but
That might be the answer. I like the GM Twins mid-sized trucks too, but the ones that I really like are all way over $30,000. So
yeah.
All right. Speaking of GM and
Yay,
Twins.
electric.
Well, I'll say this: I drove a very cool.
Let me
vehicle.
get the picture up. I don't want to mow your lawn here. Let me get excited.
Well, I was going to say that I was in Phoenix earlier this week, and I drove the Escalade V, which is super cool, but I can't talk about it until next week. So unfortunately, I have to talk about this Bolt that I've had for a day and a half. And this is the EUV, so it's the bigger one. Do you guys know what EUV stands for? Because I don't. Like, is it
electric utility vehicle.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so I've had this. I just went to charge it today for the first time. Been driving it a lot on the highway. I drove it down to Miami from me, which is like about an hour.
Did you drive it in the middle of a beach?
No, not like this picture. But I used Super Cruise a lot, which is great. It's the first, I want to say it was the first Chevy to get Super Cruise, right? Now Silverado has it.
Tahoe has it.
It's a great little electric thing for about 35 grand.
Hey,
so no complaints so far. Yeah.
Super Cruise, I've only driven it with a huge vehicle like the Escalade. Does it seem to handle itself any better in a smaller vehicle that's like quote unquote easier to keep in the lanes?
Well, so again, Escalade this week had Super Cruise on it, and it had the lane change assist. So this is not new to Escalade V.
Impressions.
Well, I was just gonna say it's not. This isn't exclusive to Escalade V, so you can go drive a regular Escalade with this.
Yeah, the Escalade we drove had it too, and that was a regular Escalade. The lane.
Yeah, so basically what it is you put a speed in. If you're in the right lane and you pull it behind a car, the Super Cruise will automatically move into the next lane, into the left lane, and go around the car and go back in the right lane. You don't have to do anything. You literally don't touch the indicator or anything. This doesn't have that, but
really?
I've had a few minor issues with this on the highway in terms of it not reading the lane correctly or telling me that I'm in an exit lane when I'm not in an exit lane. And then like the constant like inputs that the steering wheel does, like it's constantly moving back and forth. It doesn't feel as sophisticated maybe as it might in the Escalade. But I can't tell you why or what the reason would be, especially driving them into totally different cities. And Phoenix roads are like 100 times better than Miami roads, so that might be an issue too. So, yeah.
Yeah, the Super Cruise part is interesting. I think the fact that it's available on a car at this price point is great. That one thing that it's nice to see from a brand like Chevy is every once in a while they do bring out something where you see where the economies of scale of coming from one of the largest automakers in the world makes sense, right? So you've got a technology that's been more democratized into an electric vehicle that's also at a price point that like maybe not everybody but a lot of people can afford, right? So I've always honestly with the original Bolt and I have not driven the EUV. I've driven all of both the Bolt EVs that have existed thus far. I think that they are critically, when you look at them in the landscape of EVs, they fall short in a number of different areas for a lot of reasons that are good and a lot of reasons that are really silly. Yeah. But one thing that you can always say is that it's an EV that people can actually buy. Like they could find one, they can afford it, they can drive it. It's always had like a really reasonable technology solution inside the car for what lots of people need to do. And I think that the glass half full version of EUV is like, you get all that stuff in a vehicle that's slightly more usefully sized, right? I think the hard part for a lot of people is that we're still at a stage where not all, but like an awful lot of EV buyers are buying their first one ever. They're coming into the market really excited about seeing, Tesla, and they're seeing Lucid and Rivian and like these kind of spaceship like cars that cost a fortune and can do crazy things. And this doesn't do that. It just kind of is a car. But the fact that you can have a car and have it be electric and very efficient, I think is important in the big scheme of things, even if it's not as exciting in the day-to-day scheme of things, right?
Whoever buys BZ4X can be friends with whoever buys this. They probably have a lot of common interests.
Yep.
I mean,
I feel like that's a knock on both of them.
Not completely go over exactly what you just said because I agree it, but yeah, a lot of EVs are coming out and have these cool spaceship look and feel to them. And I know that's not for everybody, but this thing is just a little bit too mundane for my liking, especially when you have so many cool new things coming out.
I actually kind of dig the styling. I don't hate it at all. And I have the red one. This is the silver one, just the photos that GM took. But yeah, the red looks nice. I mean,
Yeah.
I stopped today and I was telling Clint this earlier that it's like every time you stop and charge, someone has to talk to you. And there was a guy with an ID4. He was charging his ID4.
Yeah.
And he came out and he, was asking me about this, and he's never seen one, and he saw that it was the EUV, not the regular one, and he was super interested in it. But yeah, I mean, it's not for everybody. The styling's not for everybody, but I don't hate it. I think it's a little more interesting maybe than the ID4 visually. But that's probably about it.
It's so funny. So on the styling front, in a previous life, I worked for the Chevy's Under magazine, and we would see like this photo set I'm incredibly familiar with because it like we saw it before it was published, even for PR.
Yeah.
And it was this. They shot this and they shot the revised Bolt EV at the same time. So there are lots of group shots with both the cars at the same time, and then single ones. And I can't tell you, like there were like different times in presentations or layouts or something where we just had the wrong car selected because they look so much alike that unless you literally have them next to each other, side by side, so you can see the size difference, which is actually pretty small in real life. It was really hard to tell the difference, and that doesn't go over well with a like a big client and brand new car. That's very important to them.
Well,
I think it looks fine, but
I literally sent Clint these 2 pictures before we started so we can get them ready to post, and I downloaded them from the GM media site. I sent them to Clint, and as soon as I hit send, I was like, "Oh man, I sent the regular Bolt."
Got the wrong car,
but it wasn't. It's the right one. So yeah, they're so hard to tell apart. Yeah,
cool. Right on, guys. Well, that's about our time. Thank you both for joining. This was, as ever, a ton of fun. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We got a few more questions and comments.
Yeah.
You guys should check this out again. We'll do this every Friday at 4:00, with a revolving cast of characters, I imagine.
There we go.
Yeah.
Right. Enjoy your weekend, everybody.
Good weekend. Bye, guys.
See ya.